Bellator goes head-to-head against the UFC again this November with a pair of UFC Hall of Famers in the main event. Welcome in to MMA Live. My name is Todd Grisham. Stephan Bonnar squares off against Tito Ortiz in the main event of Bellator 131. To discuss this fight further, we welcome in from Las Vegas, Nevada, our ESPN MMA writer, Brett Okamoto. Brett, first things first, why should we care about this fight?
Well, I think if you care about this fight, it's because you care about Tito Ortiz and Stephan Bonnar. You've watched these guys for a long time. You've seen their careers unfold, so you might as well tune in and see what happens when they fight each other in November. But having said that, even if you're invested in these guys' careers, this is not a particularly big fight to them. If you go into their resume and look and pick out the top 10 biggest fights of their careers, this one might not be on it. So I think this brawl that we saw, this announcement that we saw on Friday during Bellator's telecast, to announce that Bonnar was fighting Tito Ortiz, and this pro wrestling skit that we sort of saw, maybe that was an acknowledgement that maybe people don't care about this fight. We have to give them a reason to care, and that's what they came up with.
Well, I wouldn't know anything about pro wrestling, Brett, but do you think there's a legit beef between these two, or was it just some more Bellator theatrics?
Yeah, I look at this as being totally manufactured. Sure, maybe they're not best friends, so you take whatever tiny little bit of animosity is there and you blow it up in the interest of selling a fight, and this is not something that just Bellator does. All fight promotions do it. They've been doing it since basically the beginning of combat sports. I question the timing of this one, though. It was Scott Coker's first event as president of Bellator. You had the UFC literally 10 miles down the road putting on a show of its own, so they were sort of challenging one another, and you're sending the message to your fan base that this is who we are. This is something we need to do. Put on this little mini skit here to keep your interest. And I don't know if that's really necessarily the right message to send to your fan base, but that's just me.
Well, hey, we're talking about it right now on ESPN.com, so it got our attention, that's for sure. When they actually do square off in the cage, what do you expect to happen between Tito Ortiz and Stephan Bonnar?
I think Tito Ortiz is going to do what he's done for his entire career. He's going to look to take the fight to the ground. You know, Bonnar has decent defensive wrestling, so it could turn into a stand-up fight, and if it does so, I think it's going to be somewhat sloppy. You know, these two guys are past their prime, but they are veterans. They're crafty, so we'll see we'll see a glorified sparring match on the feet, unless Tito Ortiz is able to get it to the ground, in which case I think he'll get the win.
Well, also on the Bellator 131 card, Will Brooks and Michael Chandler will square off in a lightweight title rematch. Do you feel like this fight should be getting more publicity?
I mean, yes and no. Yes, because it is a great fight. It's a rematch. You know, Will Brooks took the first one somewhat controversially. And these are two guys who are in their primes. They're going to be carrying the Bellator banner for a while. But having said that, from a business standpoint, Bellator is going up against the UFC again. The UFC is promoting a pay-per-view card with a heavyweight title fight on the same night that Stephan Bonnar will be fighting Tito Ortiz. So when you come out and you make this big announcement, you have to make it with people, with two guys who fans know, and fans know Tito Ortiz and Stephan Bonnar.
Two other guys that fans know, Bobby Lashley and Czech Congo, may square off sometime soon. Both men have said they'd be willing to fight the other one. We'll keep you updated on that possible fight. That's Brett Okamoto joining us from Las Vegas, Nevada, with the latest on Bellator's head-to-head meeting against the UFC coming up later this year. That'll do it for this edition of MMA Live. I'm Todd Grisham. Keep fighting.